Hello, my name is James Trost, and this is A2 Insight. Today's guest is Mayor Christopher Taylor. Mayor Taylor, welcome to A2 Insight.
My pleasure to be here.
Well, we're very glad to have you here. I'd like to start out with, we do with all of our guests, we want to know a little bit more about you, your background, how you ended up at Ann Arbor, your academic and career pursuits. So why don't you give us a brief introduction of who is Christopher Taylor?
Sure. So, I was born in New York City and lived for most of my life in New York and Illinois, but came to Ann Arbor in 1985 for college. Came here for the music school. I've got a music degree, an English degree, an undergrad, and then went to graduate school in American history, eventually law school too. So I've got 4 degrees from the University of Michigan. Married a townie, and after a couple of years out in Boston, we moved back to Ann Arbor in 2002. I'm a lawyer. I work at the Ann Arbor law firm Hooper Hathaway on Main Street, where I do mostly estate planning and small business work for local folks. Yeah, that's my background.
Okay, well, that's a good, concise, and gives us a sense that you are a semi-townie, I guess, and you've got that eternal connection with your spouse. So that's
right.
News.
I'm a townie by proxy. You know,
Right.
I know not to claim the mantle.
Well, you have, if you can, even I don't have one. I had a hiatus away from town, and townies, there are some specific things that only if you've been here 50 or 60 years do you really qualify, but we won't go into that. Mayor Taylor, you have been mayor of our town for the past 8 years. Why do you want to keep going? Why do you want to continue being mayor of our city?
Well, fundamentally, I think there's that the city's on the right track, and that we have the opportunity to do some really cool things over the next 4 years. I think we have an increasingly professional council that is willing to look hard at the needs for local residents, needs for residents here today, but also importantly, needs for residents tomorrow. We are on the cusp of doing some amazing things with respect to water treatment, with respect to roads, with respect to policing and unarmed response. We're close, and I'm excited about moving forward on taking real strides on affordable housing. We have parcels identified, we have money allocated. Now all we got to do is have the vision and stomach to say yes. I think that we have an amazing A20 carbon neutrality plan, and it's not sentimental, it's scientific, and it is something that I'm incredibly committed to. I think the Ann Arbor residents are incredibly committed to having community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030. These are things that we can accomplish if we listen to each other, if we work together, if we listen to experts, work with staff and all community partners, and that we have the vision to go forward and try. And I'm really excited about the things that we can do.
All right. Well, we will go in a little bit more in depth in some of your ambitious plans that you have for our community in the coming years. But first, I'd like to, as I mentioned before, you have been mayor for a while, and I think what would you say you would consider to be your major accomplishments that you have achieved during the last 8 years as mayor that you'd like to highlight? Yeah,
well, first things I want to say is that nobody does anything alone. Everything is done in concert with residents, community members, colleagues, and staff. And that's fundamental. And I think it's important that folks realize it. We don't live in a dictatorship. I don't say what says goes. The process, the fun of it, to be honest, is working together with people, because every day that I'm mayor, I learn so much about how Ann Arbor works, how cities work. Over the course of my years as mayor, we've taken real strides towards affordable housing, real strides towards carbon neutrality and climate action. We've passed a millage to support affordable housing with working with Councilmember Ackerman in particular, identified, and he and I, we initiated identifying 10 city-owned parcels where we can build anywhere between 1,000 and 1,500 units of new permanent affordable housing. Working with the money that I was able to identify through the county's public safety rebate, we basically started the Office of Sustainability and Innovation, enabling us to get our climate action plan up and running, enabling us to get the A20 plan formulated, putting us on the cusp of taking real steps towards carbon neutrality. We've also rolled out very important developments with respect to basic services. We've gotten a court order to accelerate cleanup and expand monitoring with respect to 1,4-dioxin. We've implemented PFAS carbon filters at the water treatment plant. We've built a new wastewater treatment plant. And And finally, we've also, and this is an initiative that I'm really proud of, we've, in a step that's first in the country, we've obligated all public restrooms to include menstrual products in their set of sanitation products. Every restroom in their city, every public restroom now has to have a set of established products. It's what we as a culture ought to be doing, and I'm just so glad that Ann Arbor's first in the country.
All right, well, thank you for that, kind of a brief overview. I want to get into specific issues that are related to the campaign and
Sure.
obviously with the future as well. You've been a strong component of this unarmed response teams as a concept, or I assume as an alternative to traditional police responses. And we've all seen the horrors of what happens when police are not checked, and we've certainly seen the results with various infractions, George Floyd, and so on. But the question I have, and I think this is really something the community wants to know, is you talk about an alternative response, and I guess we really more specifically, what kind of communication would be coming that you would want to have instead of a police officer, but also what kind of qualifications or what kind of individuals would perform these roles? What do you envision for that?
Yeah. So first, I would say that the provision of public safety is a fundamental city obligation. It's really important that we continue to provide outstanding police services and outstanding fire services that are well-trained officers and firefighters, that they show up when you call them, when you need them in an emergency, and that they do their jobs with professionalism and bravery, that we train them right. And I'm really proud about the work we're doing and the work we're going to do. But it's also true that not every call to 911 is an emergency. Not every person who's looking for government assistance, looking to check in on someone, not everyone wants someone showing up with a gun. And so it's critical, I think, that we provide an alternative. This is not to get rid of our police department. This is to supplement the offerings to our residents so that they can be safe and be comfortable calling to ask for government help. So, if there's a wellness check, you might not want an officer showing up. You might want to have someone who is trained in social services to come and to see whether your senior neighbor, say, is doing all right. The exact details of this program are not yet fully formed. It was an initiative that I started over the course of the summer to make the inquiry, to get the ball rolling. It's going to require a lot of community engagement. We're putting the RFP together now to make that community engagement a reality. We've dedicated over $3.5 million of funds to the purpose to get this pilot program up off the ground. But it's important that it be done right and important to be done with community engagement and by listening to what the community is looking for. So who exactly is going to show up? I don't know. That's for us all to decide together. It's, I think, going to be housed outside the city. It won't be housed in the police department. But that's just my approach at this point. But I'm eager to learn and listen. This is one of those things where again, one of the joys about being mayor is that you learn so much about how cities operate, how services are delivered, and I'm looking forward to this process as well.
Well, and just a little bit on this note,
yeah,
the whole idea of a wellness check or some other, I guess the question is, what is the concern? You mentioned that people may be frightened by the appearance of a gun, but it certainly isn't that the police officers aren't trained to deal with a variety of things that come in. Why do you feel the need for this additional option? That the police, again, the police are trained to handle all sorts of situations. Why do you feel the need to move into this new area? Is it because something the police are doing? Where did this impetus come from? I guess would be my question. Yeah,
I guess I'd say you're right that our police are very well trained. The chair of our Independent Community Police Oversight Commission has recently said that she thinks they're among the best trained in the state. But they're not experts in all things. They're experts in law enforcement. They're not, experts in the provision of mental health services. They're not experts in the provision of social services. And further, there are, some community members who, are not looking to have the police show up. Who want government help, who need government assistance somehow, but the introduction of a weapon into the environment is going to inhibit them from getting the help that they need, inhibit them from asking for help for another community member. And so what we want to do is we want to lower the barriers to helping each other, lower the barriers to receiving government support of this kind. And so by having an unarmed response program, a number in Ann Arbor where you could call knowing that someone who's going to be trained in social work, trained in social services, who's going to have mental health expertise, have them show up, be confident that if you don't think a crime's going on, then police officers should be focusing on crimes. We would enable residents to make that decision on their own, to think about who they'd like to have come to provide assistance in the moment, and get that done through this unarmed response program.
All right. Well, on a similar note, I remember when you were on our show 4 years ago, this was all around the whole millage increase for mental health. Voted for this because the objective, I had Sheriff Clayton was on as well, with the objective that we were going to try to come up with alternatives to incarceration at the Washtenaw County Jail. Now, this has been ongoing. I really haven't been following that closely, but hopefully you have some updates for us as to the implementation. Could you give us an update on this millage that was passed by voters and what results we've seen? Has there been a decrease in incarceration rates? What would you tell us in this interim time of just coming into this program, what results we can see from the millage that was passed to try to move to alternative methods for mental health for the community?
Yeah, I'd say that, this of course is the county community mental health and public safety millage. And the provision through the community mental health is a primarily county function. And with this millage, they're able to continue to do the outstanding work that they provide. They're able to work with sheriff, able to work too with Ann Arbor Police when needed in order to provide mental health services in Ann Arbor, but also throughout the county. Sheriff, I know too, is able to have expanded the provision of these sorts of services to folks who are incarcerated in the county, and that is a benefit because I don't have direct visibility, direct operational engagement with those functions. I don't have the details, but I do know that these funds were and are extremely needed. I will say that part of the millage package is to provide a rebate to communities that already have police departments to offset the millage monies that are going to the sheriff so that we in Ann Arbor don't double pay. And that money comes back to us free and clear. And we committed to the voters before the vote that we were going to utilize those monies on a 40-40-20 basis. 40% for community climate action, 40% for affordable housing, 20% for pedestrian safety. And I'm proud to say that I've stuck to my promise. We've done those things and it's had incredible results. It's enabled us to get the Office of Sustainability and Innovation up off the ground, to fund the creation of the A20 program, A20 plan. It's enabled us to build affordable housing units, to build new crosswalks and new streetlights and the like to help folks be safe. The rebate has been allocated as we promised to the voters, and the success for Ann Arbor residents, I think, has been tremendous.
Okay. Actually, and right here, because I think some of voters may not be as aware of this, or could you just explain a little bit more fully what A20 is, what its objectives are? Yeah, sure. And why that's so important? Mm-hmm.
Well, we know that we're not going to stop climate action on our own, but we also know that it is our moral imperative to do our part. And what we've done in Ann Arbor is over the past couple of years, we've created the A20 plan. The A20 plan is our plan to accomplish community-wide carbon neutrality by the year 2030. It was developed through experts that we have in-house, through experts in the community, and through engagement with other, national, local, regional, and national sources to be a proactive, scientific plan to get to our ultimate goal. We adopted that plan in 2020. There'll be a millage rolling out for the voters to consider next November 2022. So that we'll be able to fund the bulk of the plan. Right now, we do have some funding through the rebate, but we're now going to get more to provide services to residents of the city of Ann Arbor. We're going to be able to expand recycling and composting year round. We're going to be able to improve electrification services to help folks buy electric appliances. We're going to expand the rooftop solar and importantly expand community solar so that folks who don't have roofs that are suitable are able to get their electricity that is clean and locally created. We're going to create resilience centers so that folks in neighborhoods can be safe and also have that sense of community. And finally, we're going to work, and hopefully we'll be able to afford it, for a public energy utility, a public sustainable energy utility, so that we'll be able to have more electricity that's locally sourced, absolutely clean and reliable.
Yeah. Now that interests me. When you say a public utility, how this would be something different that currently DTE takes care of that, or is this a public investment? It's not a creation of a new power plant. What is the actual?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways of going about it. We're rolling out a feasibility study right now so that we can test it to see which one of these paths are feasible, to see how much money would be required. But certainly the one mechanism that we're able to do right now, according to state law, and that we can, as soon as we do have some millage monies in, is to create a public sustainable energy utility. A public sustainable energy utility, which is essentially a series of microgrids. So, if this were passed and if we got this off the ground, let's say, you and your 10 neighbors are in a location that's suitable for solar. The city, through the sustainable energy utility, would help you buy solar panels that you would then use to generate local energy utility, local electricity. There'd be batteries on site in order to provide storage to extend the use of the electricity when the sun isn't shining. And then, of course, there'd be distribution lines between homes and the like in order to take advantage of the nanogrid for the locally created electricity. This picturing this throughout the city, I think, gives us a real opportunity to build sustainability, to build clean energy into the way that we do business here in the city of Ann Arbor.
Very interesting. All right. Well, and another issue we'd also talked about 4 years ago is that here we go with affordable housing. Now, This is an issue that is going on. You are addressing it in some ways, but I'm fascinated by this whole concept of the multi-use facilities, mainly because obviously the most trafficked areas are where the bus line goes, and I live in the state Eisenhower area, so I have a personal interest in this. But I also live in an area where we tried something like this that wasn't particularly effective. I live in a neighborhood that had various Krogers that closed down. I have to drive farther to get that. Lucky's was closed. And so we were hopeful that when this new building, the George, was brought into this area, that it would be multi-use, in the sense that there would be retail located on the first floor that would kind of be more community oriented. And from what I can tell and see, that didn't work. And because if you go over there, there is no retail, there's nothing. So my question to you is, I understand the importance, multi-use shifts cost and so on. It gives more variety of things. People can have more services closer by. Why didn't the George work, and how do we make sure it doesn't happen as we start opening more of these along the development lines?
Sure. As to the George, I don't have the details on that. I do know that the property owner and the builder at various times. Well, I believe that there were a number of bankruptcies and receiverships associated with that project, and as a result, it is not the success. I think that it's not the result that folks were looking for. But that's I don't think an experience likely to be replicated throughout the city. Affordable housing and attainable housing are incredibly important for our community. One thing I'm really excited about, as I mentioned on the upfront, is our ability as a city to build new permanent units of truly affordable housing that is affordable in accordance with federal definitions. If you make above a certain amount of money, you can't live here. That's the kind of affordable housing that we're looking to build on city-owned units. And I believe over the next couple of years, we are poised, if we're willing to say yes, if we're willing to take risks and move forward in this with gusto, and I am, we're going to be able to build between 1,000 and 1,500 units of new permanent affordable housing throughout the city. That doesn't get us to the end, because of course we have many more people who want to live in Ann Arbor, who work in Ann Arbor but want to live here, and they're not going to be suitable for, they're going to perhaps even make too much money for these affordable units. Right. And we've had for years a constraint on supply, and supply and demand is real. That's why we have a housing crisis, because supply and demand creates it. More people want to live here than there are housing units. And so on corridors such as the one you identified, State and Eisenhower, what we're doing is we are changing the zoning after a lot of public process and listening to create zoning designations that will permit property owners to build, multifamily residential units on transit corridors. Folks will be able to come in and out of town more easily without a car. The prices are going to be, it's new construction, so it's not going to be, it's not going to be dirt cheap, but over time, certainly, and even from the jump, it's going to be nowhere near downtown prices. These are going to be properties, homes that are going to be attainable by people who work in Ann Arbor, because we want people to be able to work in Ann Arbor to live in Ann Arbor. It's good for our community. It's good for the diversity within our community, the economic and racial diversity within our community, and it's good for our carbon neutrality goals. We don't want people to take the car in for 30 minutes. We want them to be able to hop on a bus, go downtown, do what they need to do what they want to do, and then take the bus on back home.
Good. And you have developers that are willing to build with.
I mean, it's America, so, it's not a command economy. I don't control these things. But, Ann Arbor is plainly and obviously a place where people want to be. And so it's my belief that when people are given the opportunity to create something new in these locations, that the value will be there, that the market will be there for it, that people will want to live there, new Ann Arbor residents want to live there, and that it'll be honestly good for all of us.
All right. Well, let's go back to some of the practical realities of what it's like to be leading a city council or being part of a city council in a larger area. And this has been an issue that, and again, I do follow these things locally and the various things that go on in council. We don't, this is not a political philosophy distinctions between Democrats and Republicans. For the most part here in Ann Arbor, it's been Democratic rule for decades in the sense of Democratic Party. But we also, there's factions that happen within council, and that seems to be the acrimony and personalities get in the way. And you've been leading there, and you've been on the side. It's sometimes it's not pretty. The conversations, and it's like our larger political conversations have this as well. But my question would be, as to be reelected mayor for another term, you see what you've learned over the course of your leadership of the council and being mayor of the town. Any innovations that you've learned or that you plan on changing in terms of how to bring again some of the all of the council to be a supportive unit where we all have the same kind of united vision instead of the acrimony that sometimes take place in the divisions? What have you learned, I guess, would be a better thing over 8 years?
Yeah, I guess one thing I'd say is like a united vision isn't, I don't think united vision is a necessary qualification for a constructive political culture. Okay. Disagreement, no, that's fine. Disagreement is American. Having different ideas about how we can make our community, work for everyone. No, shoot. I learn new stuff every day. And, if everybody said, oh, Christopher, that's a great idea, then I wouldn't learn anything. Disagreement is not the issue. Lack of unified vision is not the issue. I frankly just believe the issue is personality. If you're a constructive person, you can disagree with decorum. You can disagree with courtesy. If you value that sort of engagement, then that's how you're going to act. And I do. If you thrive on conflict, if grievance gets you up in the morning, then that's what you're going to bring to the table. And frankly, I don't think that there's, I don't have any power to speak of. I don't control. I'm one of 11 votes. There's very little that I can do on my own, except lead by example. I think that I treat people with courtesy at the table and elsewhere. I strive to listen always. I strive not to talk ill of folks, and I don't really respond very much when people talk ill of me. Turning the other cheek is, it's part of. I think it's part of doing business. And so, what have I learned? I think if you want a constructive council, elect constructive people.
Okay. And that would be that's up to the voters to make that choice.
It is. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, this is as 4 years ago, you do have a challenger for this position. This is a former colleague of yours, Ann Bannister, that's running for mayor as well. The initial assumption was she didn't want you to go unchallenged, which appears to be one of the reasons she is running for the office. But the question I have for you is that you work with that as a colleague. why should I, as a voter, choose you over Ann in terms not, and again, without any acrimony, of course, but because of the differences you share in terms of a vision for the community.
I mean, I guess you've asked this question, and so I'll answer it. I think that well, I'm a practical person and I'm a reasonable person. I approach the job with listening, but I also approach the job understanding that that government is iterative and that we need to try things and we need to improve, but we can't let the gold be the perfect be the enemy of the good. I get along well with staff. I support the work that they do. I believe that we always need to move forward on housing. I'm committed to building affordable housing. We've grown in Ann Arbor about 1% a year for the past 10 years or so, and I know that all successful cities do in fact grow. And while I love the Ann Arbor from 1985. I love Drake's. My first date with my wife was in Drake's. Yeah. We met right outside the old Borders, the one on State Street, and I loved it and miss it. It's but successful cities change; they grow. I also think that we have to demand better of ourselves at the council table. Folks have seen statements at council and by council members that frankly require condemnation. And I have been I've been forthright in saying what's right and wrong, and I haven't defended it. And I think that's one of the differences between us as council members. I also think that I look forward to working with the university. The university is the engine of our community. It's plain and obvious. It's an economic engine. It's a cultural engine. It provides employment for us all. And my opponent has said recently on Facebook that one of her proposed solutions to the affordability problems is to have the university move students and jobs to Flint and other campuses. And all love to those jurisdictions. I don't want the university to shift its operations, outside the city. The university they've got their own interests, but they're a partner with whom we can work in a professional, reasonable way, and that's I think something that I will certainly be able to do.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, again, having just interviewed her, Bannister, I do have an interest. Because one of the issues always is parking downtown, getting around town, and one of her suggestions is that the people don't want to ride the bus. It's been difficult to get people to make that transition, particularly in the winter months. But the solution is that people had lesser wait times. Perhaps that might increase ridership. Maybe, do you have any ideas or ways to? Because I think it's wonderful we have sustainable buses and we're trying to use more. Mm-hmm. But I can with the exception of number 4 and a couple other lines, you can watch there's nobody on it. So I'm just wondering how do we increase ridership on the ride?
Yeah, well, the AAA, I don't run the AAA. It's not a city function. Okay. The AAA is its own entity. It's nominated. I nominate some of the members of the board and commission. Council approves them, but they have their own business. They have their own money and millages. They are not funded by us. And so the intricacies of how the buses actually work is, it's a AAA function.
But then the idea of having more people ride, though, because again, this kind of goes to me probably back to your zero emissions. Obviously, the parking structures or parking permits downtown are almost the amount of a one-bedroom apartment. The parking is difficult downtown, and it does kind of a large footprint. What do you think would? I know you've certainly been an advocate of bike paths and so on, which may be wonderful really not very helpful during the winter months. But what do you think would be a way of getting people to be more committed? Is that more just a messaging saying you don't need to drive your car or take a chance? I think fundamentally,
Well, there are a couple of things. Cars are going to be here for an incredibly long time, and so. But I think it's also important that we create alternatives, that we support alternatives. I think that we are supporting AAATA. One thing that I'm excited about is, with this drive to create more permanent affordable housing, we're putting the old Y lot. We're looking to build, a couple of hundred units there of housing. We're also looking to let the AAATA have, a fair bit of land off to the south of that on that lot. The north of the lot to the south of the current structure, so that they can have an extra bus bay to improve their services. I think that we have to make sure that that the roads are safe for all users at all times, whether you're driving a car, of course, whether you're biking or whether you're walking. I think that with expanded residences on bus routes, on transit corridors, that's going to, of necessity, increase bus usage, and I think that's going to, of course, be good for AAATA, but it's also going to be good for the environment, and it's going to be a benefit to the folks who live at those new locations, those new Ann Arborites, who will be able to get in and out of town without a car. And frankly, and finally, it's going to be good for folks who are already here. Having more residents will improve the quality of life for folks who are here now. We all know that we are living in an increasingly economically segregated community. And with economic segregation, because America, of course, comes racial segregation. It is not good for us as a community, and we need to stop it. And the way that we can make that change is through increased numbers of affordable housing, saying yes to housing that's affordable, and also saying yes to other housing throughout the city. It's supply and demand. It's incapable of you can't fight supply and demand. It's real, and we need to understand that and have the vision and commitment to say that the city that we've created now, it's awesome in so many ways, but it just doesn't meet our aspirations. And the only way to change is to change what we're doing.
Mayor Christopher Taylor is running for re-election to the position of mayor of Ann Arbor. Mayor Taylor, I want to thank you for being on A2 Insight today. Just remember to everyone watching that the primary voting is August 2nd. Make sure you get your voice heard by showing up and voting. Again, for A2 Insight, until next time, I'm James Trost.